few good reviews, 25. There are like 25 albums in this one. Like, there's fucking loads. I talked about a load of albums. Sorry for the long episode. Hopefully you get something out of it. I talk about some bigger releases that I just haven't really had much to say. There was an IDK album. There was a King Gizzard album as well. There was the Temples album that came out not too long ago. But try sticking around for the whole thing, because there are some like recommendations I throw throughout the video, because there are some like smaller releases that I do think are actually pretty good and deserved way more attention. So let me know your thoughts on these albums. Let's go! Yeah, this IDK isn't too good, really. It was fine on first listen. I thought there was some really good tracks, but the lyrics on here, he's just not particularly very good at like crafting an interesting topic, because he kind of tries to go into like religious themes on here, and that closing track with that outro is just, oh my god. That is the corniest shit. If you haven't heard this album yet, I'm not spoiling it for you, because you're just gonna you're gonna laugh when you find out what is said on that one. It is so bad. But yeah, I did like the Pusha T feature. I thought it was pretty good. In fact, that whole track with Jid and Pusha T, you know, it was good. It was a good track. Some of the bangers are out too, but he's still a bit young. He'll get there eventually, I think, with these lyrics. He's some of the instrumentals are pretty hard knocking. I think they were pretty good for bangers, but yeah, he's got a bit of a way to go. Also, we're putting out some really solid indie rock music here, just very catchy and melodic and straight to the point. They've got a good ear for writing a good tune, and there's a bit of that emo tinge to some of the lyrics, and overall it's just a good album. Like I know like your typical rock fans who like their music to be kind of like a bit of a throwback to the 90s are going to be all over this kind of thing. Yeah, I think they're doing some good stuff. Check it out. Here's the thing with Pixies, okay? I don't really need an album that sounds like their 80s or even 90s work, because they're a different band now. The times have changed. It's not like they need to be doing what they've already done in the past. If you want that, just go listen to that, because it's already available for you if you're a fan of them anyway. But just as a standalone 2019 indie rock, alt rock album, this I thought was just really bad. I couldn't stomach some of these songs, honestly. Like, some of the vocals I think are really poor at this point. It's sad to hear, really. They just sound so tame. They don't really have any flavour to them. The instrumentals are just really soft too. I think the lyrics were some of the worst parts of the album as well. I just think this is just really bad. Once again, I'm not really feeling the vocals on this Whitney album. I just find them so grating and shrill. I can't get with it. But there are nicer songs on this one, I think, than the debut. Musically, it has improved. The second track is lovely, and I think actually it's one of the few moments where the vocals actually work with that nice guitar melody really well, and it fits together extremely well in a way that I just wasn't expecting. But even still, like, there aren't that many moments like it, so it does just kind of leave that same feeling once again. But it is overall a bit better, just not really feeling it. It's just one of those things, if you don't like the vocals, you can't connect to the music, and there's nothing really that can be done about it, I guess. There's so many artists like that out there, that way people are just like, yeah, I don't like the vocals, and if you don't, you don't, and that's it. Hobo Johnson, dude, oh man, now the lack of like ear for a melody or a tune is concerning. The guy just like talks basically over these limp beats. Like, he just cannot like bring up a memorable tune ever. Sometimes he tries to sing and it sounds pretty poor, and then he sometimes tries to like like rap sing thing, like, yeah, but it's just so bad. He sounds as corny as Logic does, and Logic is meant to be like a rapper, so God, you and a cockroach. The way he tries to tell the stories is so funny to me. I cannot tell if he's trying to take himself seriously or if he's not. That's the part that makes the album so confusing to listen to. He's obviously an awkward guy, and I'm okay with that, you know. He explains that on I Want a Dog, but he just tells it in the worst way. Wow, this was bad. All things considered, this is significantly weaker than Elle Varner's previous work. A 2012 album is really overlooked, I think. Some powerhouse vocal performances on that thing. It's just such a good soulful R&B album that really needs way more attention than it's got. But this newer one is kind of watered down. It's not really got that same impact, I don't think. Pretty standard modern tinges in the instrumentals. It's just a very modern sounding R&B album, which shouldn't be a negative, but sometimes that just kind of pulls away from the songs, because here they just don't sound anywhere near as good as what she's done before, I don't think. But still, definitely check it out. It's fine, but it just doesn't really wow me. No to this new Ferg, man. What is that? What is that opening track with the chorus? Jesus Christ, that is funny. It's just blaring out. Oh wow, I cannot describe what he was doing there. And the lyrics across this thing, Jesus Christ, on the last track, the lyrics, some of the worst I've heard all year. Some good bangers though. I thought Wham was good. The Nico Rico and Nasty feature was good as well. So like, yeah, occasionally a few bangers, but overall just his lyrics, his choruses, his hooks, the ASAP Rocky feature as well, that was a pretty dull track too for me. Like, yeah, this was pretty weak overall. That first track, what was that first track? I really do like Common as a person. I think he's genuinely a really nice, honest guy who just wants to spread a positive message with almost all of his songs. He is just one of those genuinely great people, similarly to someone like Mos Def, I think, as well. But like, musically, this is just so dull to me, man. I mean, the hooks on here are just such like standard soulful type ones that you've heard a lot in hip hop's history, and they just don't stick with you at all. They're pretty nice, I guess, but even Common on here as well is just kind of just moving by very, very swiftly. Not really like, he doesn't really have like a charge in him. Some of his lyrics as well and his rhymes are really weak for him on this. That whole thing where he like rhymes all like the modern rappers like 21 Savage, Cardi B, Kendrick, J. Cole, and that was just kind of corny to me. And some of these tracks as well do just reek of a bit of corniness, honestly. But yeah, it's nice, but it's just a dull listen. This Yikii album is very interesting. It's got so many weird soundscapes throughout. There's some really eerie ambient moments, and there's some really heavy industrial moments as well, which I think really works quite well. I think the only thing really that drags it down are the vocals, but I think the vocals could work depending on the listener, because they are very creepy at points. They're very childlike too, so you could listen to them and find them really kind of like weird and shiver inducing. But I do think they just needed a bit more grit and a bit more of an impact. But everything else I was impressed with on the album. It just did need more, I guess, power in the vocals, power in the voice, you know what I mean? But it is cool. Some lovely ambient pop type stuff, some like trip hop influences as well from Sui Zhen. Definitely could have done with like a stronger presence as a vocalist, but she does have a really nice voice, and every now and then she breaks through and shines really well. But the instrumentals are definitely the best part of the album, I think, especially the last track. The last track had a really strong like synthy instrumental that I really liked. But yeah, it's some solid stuff. Definitely check this out. Ambient pop fans, you'll like this. Do it. Listen. Do it. Look, it's pretty pointless for me to talk about every King Gizzard release that comes out these days, because it's pretty clear at this point that I'm not the biggest fan of the band. I liked a few of the albums way back when, like Nonagon Infinity, but since then I haven't really liked anything they've put out, so there's no reason for me to talk about this new one when it's just a pale attempt at thrash metal. Like, they're very diverse with their styles, but they don't always get the styles well, and this is a perfect example of that. and I barely talk about metal on my channel anyway, so it just would seem like a bit of an insult to talk about this album when it is literally just them, you know, imitating a sound that they're really not very good at. Like they could have really practiced this for a lot longer. The guy's voice barely works on most of these songs. The instrumentals are the most generic thrash metal instrumentals you could pick. There's just no reason for me to talk about this in depth, but yeah, I mean, if you're enjoying this, fair enough, but I would highly recommend you going back to the classic thrash metal albums, because they're so much better than what King Gizzard are trying here. Now, what I said about the vocals on the Yikii album is the complete opposite of what I'm going to say about the vocals on this Pharmakon album, because these vocals are instantaneously memorable. You will not be forgetting these vocals anytime soon after you hear this. However, look, the minute I put this album on, right, I was terrified. The vocals completely blew my mind. I was in shock. It was genuinely scary to hear this voice just blaring out. The sheer force of the voice here is unmatched. But after 3 or 4 minutes of the album, it just loses its impact. It's just the same over and over and over again, and there is nothing to diversify what they're doing here. And for a 36-minute album, which isn't a very long runtime, feels so much longer because the lack of ideas. It's just the same over and over on every song. I just couldn't bear it anymore. It's the point where it just got awful. Genuinely one of the worst albums I've heard all year because of that. If there was just something new on each track to change things up, that maybe it would have been great, but it just isn't. There just isn't. It's just really standard death industrial instrumentals that you've probably heard from other artists before. Check out Prurient or something like that. But yeah, this, man, was just tedious. It was awful. I just couldn't bear it anymore. It lost the impact was lost almost immediately. I couldn't believe how quickly I just blanked everything out. It just became empty noise, just blaring in my ears, and yet I was getting nothing out of it. It just really, really failed at what it was attempting to do for me. I think this is terrible. You may recognize the name Shadi from Clarence Clarity's Think Peace album from last year. He was on the track Fold'em, putting a really cool verse. And this album here, You Can't Hear Me, is some really strange, off-kilter, abstract hip-hop. Like, there is not much you'll hear like this in 2019. And Shady is very political. It goes heavy into like social themes and social issues on the album too. But I think the one thing holding it back just a little bit is his voice. Like, he has this weird delivery, and it ruins songs like iPhone. Just ugly, ugly sounding song to my ears. But it doesn't ruin the whole album. Like, I think it is pretty solid overall. I just think if he kind of controlled it a little bit better, but I guess that's kind of part of his shtick anyway, because he is kind of wild and freaky, so he probably wants to keep that going. But yeah, it does kind of hold the album back a little bit, but I still think it's a really cool album that you should check out. This Bat for Lashes album is okay. I think the best of her discography is still The Haunted Man. I think that's a really good album. But this new one's just fine. There are some moments where the drumming just sounds really hollow and very 80s inspired. That just kind of drags some of the songs back a little bit. But there are some really bright spots here, like the third track of the album, which just totally reminds me of something from the last LaRue album. I thought that was a pretty solid pop track. But like a majority of this album, I just feel like she's kind of playing it safe, very artsy, very kind of atmospheric, not really getting much of an identity here, because at times she sounds like Florence and the Machine, other times she sounds like Susan Sunfer. It's just like a mismatch of all these different styles that kind of bring together this this very plain sound, but overall it sounds okay, so I'm not really too mad at it. It's just fine. Revivalist psych rock. what a boring genre. Why did we need to revive this? If you're not going to do anything exciting with it, then just leave it in the past. Just leave it, please. I think tracks like Context and Step Down are fine, honestly, they're okay. I think if I heard them in a bar just having a drink with my friends, I wouldn't get mad at it playing, I'd just be like, yeah, this is fine. But the title track and the third track too, like that little track Run, that's so bad. They're so bad. Those tracks are terrible. What were they doing here? And the rest of it's just so bland and derivative, I just don't really get. It's just, yeah, I just don't know. I just don't see the appeal. Shout out to my boy Ricky putting me on Vola, which is some Cuban jazz type stuff. I love this genre, to be honest. But because I think I'm a bit of a slut for the genre, this just doesn't really impress me all that much. The performances are pretty solid, but they're nothing really too exciting for the genre, really. But the last song is definitely the highlight. It's definitely a great closing track. But yeah, it's pretty solid. Came out quite a while ago. If you're into trying out some different genres from across the world, I don't see why you couldn't give this one a go. Struggling with Matt Comey, man. I think his voice is just really dull. I think the beats on this thing are dire as well. The songs just don't sound very good. He implements a few hooks every now and then. And on the track Force Majeure, the song was going well until the hook. Like, I just don't really find this enjoyable to listen to. I think the appeal to Matt Comey lies beyond the music, though. You know, he's very mysterious. He seems like a bit of a strange enigma type figure, very similar to Orville Peck, which is like the country version of Matt Comey, really, where, like, you know, they're very interesting characters that people really have gotten sucked into. But funnily enough, both of the music that they make, to me, just is really, really dull, and I get nothing out of it. So yeah, not seeing the appeal of this man just yet. Maybe one day, who knows. So you may remember Girl Band, they really fizzled out, but back in 2015 there was so much buzz for this band. Like, seriously, I remember a lot of buzz for these guys. Similar to like a Black Midi, where there was just so much buzz before we'd even heard an album that it was just like, okay, it's inevitable that this band is gonna get huge. But then the album just wasn't really that good, and people didn't really take to it, and people just kind of like left them behind. And now 4 years later, they're just here making worse music. Actually, to be honest, it's just really mediocre. It gets really predictable after a few listens. Like, some of the tracks just feel really one note, even though what they're doing, like especially with the vocals, I think are really, really impressive and weird. But like the drumming on this thing is just, it just gets so boring. Everything feels so squashed as well. I just don't know what happened with the mixing here, but nothing really feels like it's coming out in full force. Everything just kind of feels like compressed and pushed down, and you don't really get that much excitement out of the songs. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame to see them just become like this, I guess. I suppose there are some interesting LGBT themes explored on this Ezra Furman album, but not really the most interesting I've heard, especially not in 2019 with so many great albums that explore these themes way better already, to be honest. And the revivalism that's going on here, it just reminds me of like some 70s rock, like that glam rock era. It really isn't doing much unique, so it just kind of gets really boring, to be honest, to listen to. I don't know, it just reminds me of like the stuff that Kyle Craft is doing. Kyle Craft can make some really good songs, but this is like the weaker version of what Kyle can do, or like the weaker version of what Foxygen can do on their like worst work. So yeah, it's pretty dull as a listen, but it's pretty short too, so maybe you'll get something out of it. Chelsea Wolfe never used to be this dull, did she? What is this? She's just taken away all of that dark and disturbing energy. She had such a strange aura about her in her previous works that just made her such a captivating musician to listen to. Even if I wasn't always loving her work, because I don't love everything she's put out, but I definitely at least appreciate the majority of her albums. But this one was, yeah, she just took away all of that interesting sound design that made the music so good. Like, now it's just not there, and it only really reveals how much of a bland singer she is, to be honest. The music here doesn't really impact me whatsoever. I'm just left confused with this one. This did not meet expectations at all, really, at all. And thank you for watching this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you got something out of it. Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Have a good day. Goodbye.